Earlier today, Senator Kamala Harris laid out why Joe Biden picking her as his running mate is anything but a safe choice. Harris checks off boxes that none of the previous vice presidential candidates could. She is a Black woman, a graduate of a historically Black college, and she's the daughter of immigrants. And while her selection is definitely a big deal, it is certainly not, as President Barack Obama pointed out today, some stunt.
Kamala is somebody I've known for years. She is smart. She is tough. She is somebody who I think will be able to share the stage with Mike Pence or whoeverybody else and dissect some of the terrible decisions that have been made over the last 4 years that have helped create worse problems than were necessary in the midst of this pandemic. And most importantly, I think she's somebody who is going to be able to give Joe sound advice and be a terrific sounding board when he has to make tough decisions during the course of his presidency.
To talk more about this, I'm joined by Paula Ramos, former Deputy Director of Hispanic Media for Hillary Clinton, and LaTosha Brown. She's the co-founder of Black Voters Matter, an organization dedicated to expanding Black voter engagement. Thank you so much for being here tonight. LaTosha, I want to start with you. As a Black woman, seeing Kamala Harris being selected to be the vice presidential nominee is historic. Just what's your gut level reaction to seeing a Black woman in that position?
This is our moment that Black women have always been on the vanguard of really protecting democracy. We have done the work. We stood with the suffragists, and we still didn't get the right to vote. 50 years later, we stood in Selma, Alabama on the bridge, and most people didn't see us because we were in the back. But here we are on this eve where I think that a ceiling has been broken. And anytime a glass ceiling is broken, it creates light and room for others and rooms for the imagination. And so I think that this is really a historic moment that was co-created by millions of Black women in this country who have continued to stand in the space to fight for democracy.
Absolutely. Black women have been on the forefront fighting for our democratic values. Paula, in terms of what Kamala Harris means to the Latinx community and to people who are from immigrant families, obviously Black women, can see themselves in Kamala. But there are other aspects of her story that I think are relevant in terms of how the Latinx community sees this nomination. What's your reaction? And in terms of those folks, what's your reporting show from the ground, what they're feeling about Kamala Harris's nomination?
I think what they're feeling and what many people are feeling is that it's needed. Now, I think the incredible effect that we've seen just in the past 3 days is that suddenly, within hours, millions of more people were able to suddenly see themselves in the White House. Now, I think there was this larger understanding that Joe Biden could be Donald Trump, right? That's what the polls indicated. But I think there was this general question of, can we see ourselves in the White House? Now, can we see ourselves in this larger vision that Joe Biden has? And Kamala Harris is allowing a lot of us to see ourselves there, no? It's not just Black folks, it's that suddenly immigrants can too, and Latinos and biracial folks, and those that come from API communities and women, right? And that's what she represents, right? Many people suddenly can see themselves in her. And so I think it's incredibly powerful. And I'm talking to you from Miami, where I've been talking to Latinas all day long. And until this moment, many people have felt invisible and neglected by both parties. And so I think now this is a very important opportunity for the Democratic Party to start inserting themselves in these spaces.
LaTosha, in your work, you are working directly with Black voters. And I feel like the turnout between, or not I feel, but I know for a fact that the turnout between 2012 and 2016, it fell off in terms of Black voter turnout due to a number of factors: voter suppression, voter ID laws, and also a lack of enthusiasm in the process. Do you think this election of Kamala Harris will excite young Black voters and other voters of color as we head into the upcoming election?
I will tell you that my phone has been ringing off the hook, that I have gotten all kinds of messages and people are calling, volunteering with the organization, saying they want to help. That one, we do want to see ourselves, that having a Black woman in the ticket as we knew it, those of us who were supporting that knew that it would energize the ticket. I think Kamala, if it energizes the ticket, I think that when we're looking at, we want to see a reflective democracy, that the majority of people in this country are women, yet we have not held the position of vice president or president. And so now I think that what you're seeing is you're going to see a coalition of not only just Black voters, I think you're going to see immigrants, I think you're going to see people of color, I think you're going to see women, I think you're going to see progressives. I think now we have a ticket that is more reflective of America, and I think Americans will respond to that. And so what I have been seeing so far, people engaged in really wanting to figure out how can they get involved. And I think that's what we're going to see. I don't think it's just who's on the ticket. I think we're in a particular moment in time, too, that people are really concerned about issues. People are concerned about if we've got 40 million Americans that have lost their income, they're concerned about that. People are concerned about the voter suppression. And now you're seeing mailboxes being taken. I've gotten all kinds of phone calls around that. Folks want democracy. People want to make sure that they and their families can actually be okay, that they have the economics that they need, that they have job security, and they have health care. Let us not forget that we are in the largest health pandemic in the last 100 years. So there's a lot of anxiety. Folks want change, and they want someone that's going to be responsive. And I do think that that's what this ticket represents.
Absolutely. In the last minute here, Paula, I want to ask you, as we head into the Democratic Convention next week, there's been a lot of conversation about the fact that Julian Castro was not included in the lineup of speakers, and that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the congresswoman from New York, was given 60 whole seconds to speak. What's the reaction of the Latino community you've been interacting with all week on the ground to that, snub? It seems to be a snub.
Yeah. It is. I mean, just look at the big picture, right? Latinas are about to become the largest minority voting bloc. There's 32 million eligible Latino voters. We are the youngest demographic. Beyond that, in the past 4 years, Latinos have also been the center of attack of this administration. And so I think the question that everyone has is, at a time where Latinos do need the Democratic Party, and when the Democratic Party also needs Latinos in order to win the White House, why not give Julian Castro the same amount of time, primetime slots, as, say, Andrew Yang or Mayor Pete or Bloomberg? Why? And so that when we're talking about equality, when Senator Harris, we have an opportunity to talk about why representation matters, why it goes beyond the narrative, right? Why it goes beyond statistics. Why not use this as an opportunity to put Julian Castro, who's been an important voice in the Latino community, and give him the same equal amount of time as other candidates?